greatest lie of the modern era is the myth of absolute connectivity. We have been conditioned to believe that our value is directly proportional to our network, that our success depends on our visibility, and that keeping our doors permanently open to the world is a sign of strength. You are told to network at every opportunity, to maintain a flawless social presence, and to respond to every digital demand on your time with immediate enthusiasm. But if you strip away the romanticized illusions of modern hustle culture, you are left with a brutal, undeniable reality. You are completely exhausted. Your focus is fractured into 1,000 meaningless pieces, and your deepest ambitions are being systematically suffocated by the collective mediocrity of the people around you. You are running on a psychological treadmill, expending massive amounts of emotional capital to sustain relationships that offer absolutely zero return on investment. You have mistaken accessibility for influence and compliance for progress. At Lucid Soma, we look past the superficial noise of contemporary self-help to dissect the raw mechanics of human nature and power. The truth that society desperately tries to hide from you is that the modern social structure is fundamentally transactional. Every interaction, every corporate alignment, and every superficial friendship operates on an underlying currency of utility and leverage. When you dedicate your finite cognitive bandwidth to keeping everyone around you comfortable, you are not building an empire, you are actively dismantling your own power. You are sacrificing your focus to manage the fragile egos, the endless dramas, and the constant insecurities of a crowd that will forget your name the moment you are no longer useful to them. By remaining hyper-accessible, you have allowed the external world to dictate your daily priorities, transforming you from a strategic driver of your own destiny into a purely reactive entity. To comprehend the sheer scale of this psychological trap, we must examine the cold, unfiltered realism of Niccolò Machiavelli. Writing during a period of intense political instability in 16th century Italy, Machiavelli observed human behavior not as he wished it to be, but exactly as it manifested in the real world. In his masterwork, The Prince, he famously articulated that men are inherently fickle, ungrateful, and driven entirely by self-interest. He noted that as long as you are providing value and ensuring their safety, people will profess absolute loyalty, offering you their blood, their resources, and their allegiance. However, the moment your utility fades or a real crisis emerges, that manufactured loyalty instantly evaporates. Machiavelli understood that relying on the emotional goodwill or shifting affections of others is the ultimate strategic failure. In the modern American landscape, this timeless truth manifests every single day. Look at the cutthroat corporate environments of Silicon Valley or Wall Street, where years of dedicated loyalty are instantly erased the moment a company needs to optimize its quarterly profit margins. Look at social circles where your peers celebrate your progress, but only up to the exact threshold where your achievements begin to cast a shadow over their own mediocrity. Human nature has not evolved, it has simply become more sophisticated at masking its transactional core behind the language of empathy and community. When you remain emotionally and socially attached to everyone, you become a sponge for collective anxiety, complacency, and distraction. Every person you allow into your psychological inner circle exacts a hidden tax on your attention. Attention is the ultimate currency of exceptional achievement. If your attention is constantly hijacked by text messages, superficial social obligations, and the manufactured crises of others, you possess absolutely nothing left to invest in your own execution. You cannot achieve hyperfocus while operating at the beck and call of the ordinary. Machiavelli recognized that to build something truly monumental, to elevate oneself above the chaotic currents of human weakness, an individual must possess the absolute willingness to implement strategic isolation. Calculated detachment is not born out of bitterness, hatred, or social anxiety. It is the ultimate manifestation of supreme pragmatism. It is the conscious decision to declare psychological sovereignty from the expectations, opinions, and emotional demands of the collective. When you detach from people, you immediately reclaim your cognitive bandwidth. You stop playing a rigged social game where the rules are written by the uninspired, and you begin constructing your own parameters for victory. You transition from a compliant pawn within someone else's framework into an autonomous sovereign who operates with absolute, unyielding intentionality. Every iconic figure who has ever redefined an industry, accumulated immense wealth, or achieved an elite level of mastery has undergone a distinct, uncompromising phase of radical isolation. In modern performance psychology, this is widely recognized as entering monk mode. It is a calculated period where you go completely dark, eliminating the white noise of the social world to funnel every single drop of your mental energy into a singular, monumental objective. The profound frustration you are experiencing right now is the direct friction between your latent potential and your excessive social attachments. You know you are capable of operating at a substantially higher level, yet you remain anchored by the fear of social rejection, the discomfort of being perceived as cold, and the childish desire to please everyone. This internal division is paralyzing your progress. Machiavelli explicitly warned that a leader who attempts to satisfy every faction will ultimately lose the respect of all. It is time to audit your life through a lens of absolute strategic utility. If a relationship is not actively sharpening your intellect, fortifying your discipline, or accelerating your execution, it is actively degrading it. There is no neutral territory. In the absolute pursuit of legendary success, every connection that does not propel you forward is an anchor dragging you down. To understand exactly why detaching from the collective is the single most powerful catalyst for elite execution, we must look past superficial advice and examine the hard science of human psychology and the cold realities of historical power. High performance is not a product of luck, it is a direct consequence of energy allocation. When you examine the human brain through the lens of cognitive load theory, you realize that your mind possesses a strictly finite amount of working memory and processing power every single day. Every human relationship you maintain, every text thread you keep active, and every emotional conflict you attempt to resolve acts exactly like a background application running on a smartphone. You might think you are focused on your grand strategy, but if you have 20 superficial relationships running in the background of your consciousness, your processing speed is catastrophically degraded. You are suffering from chronic cognitive fragmentation. You cannot write a legendary business plan, engineer a disruptive software architecture, or master a highly complex financial market when your brain is constantly forced to shift contexts to process the mundane updates of an uninspired social circle. At Lucid Soma, we define true power as the absolute control over your attention marketplace. In modern psychological research, there is a well-documented phenomenon known as emotional contagion. Human beings are neurologically wired to mirror the emotional states, anxiety levels, and risk tolerances of the people they spend the most time with. If your primary circle consists of individuals who operate out of fear, who prioritize short-term comfort over long-term empire building, and who constantly seek dopamine-driven validation through gossip and consumerism, you will inevitably internalize those exact suboptimal behavioral patterns. You cannot build a bulletproof mindset while swimming in a pool of collective anxiety. Machiavelli observed this human vulnerability with chilling accuracy. He noted that men are easily corrupted by the weaknesses of their peers because the natural instinct of the human animal is to conform to the safety of the herd. To achieve a state of 100% focus on success, you must consciously break this neurological feedback loop. You must implement a strict psychological quarantine, cutting off the transmission of mediocrity so your mind can recalibrate to its highest operational capacity. The historical proof of this mechanism is deeply embedded in the very origin of Machiavellian philosophy. Consider Niccolò Machiavelli himself. His most profound insights, the timeless strategic principles that leaders have covertly studied for over 500 years, were not conceptualized while he was actively mingling in the glamorous, chaotic courts of Florence. They were forged during his brutal, forced exile in the isolated countryside of San Casciano. Stripped of his political status, cut off from the daily noise of the Republic, and completely isolated from his former colleagues, Machiavelli was forced into absolute solitude. It was within this deep, uninterrupted isolation that he found his ultimate clarity. Every evening, he would strip off his muddy, everyday clothes, put on his magnificent court robes, and spend hours in total silence reading the classics and analyzing the raw mechanics of history. In that state of profound detachment, the noise of immediate political drama disappeared, allowing him to see the eternal, unchanging laws of power. His isolation was not a punishment, it became his ultimate laboratory. If the man who wrote the blueprint for global power required absolute detachment to perceive reality clearly, it is pure arrogance to believe you can build your destiny while constantly distracted by the superficial chatter of the modern world. Furthermore, we must analyze the profound impact of detachment on interpersonal power dynamics, specifically through the law of strategic scarcity. In his strategic assessments of leadership, Machiavelli explicitly emphasized the delicate balance between familiarity and respect. He stated that excessive familiarity inevitably breeds contempt, whereas absence and unpredictability magnify a leader's reputation and perceived authority. When you are constantly available, when you answer every phone call on the first ring, and when you show up to every casual social gathering, your perceived value drops to zero. You become a commodity. You become a predictable, easily accessible asset within the social calculus of others. The moment you implement radical detachment, the moment you withdraw your presence and focus entirely on your execution, you instantly alter the power dynamic. Your time becomes an elite, high-value asset. By becoming less accessible, you force the world to respect the boundaries of your purpose. You transition from someone who seeks inclusion into an enigmatic force whose attention must be actively earned. From a neurochemical standpoint, modern American society is engineered to keep your dopamine receptors in a state of perpetual volatility. The endless notifications, the performative culture of modern networking, and the societal pressure to maintain a wide social circle keep your brain hooked on shallow, low-effort rewards. This constant state of overstimulation completely destroys your capacity for deep work. Deep work requires a stabilized neurochemistry. When you enter a phase of total detachment, your brain undergoes a profound dopamine detox. In the initial weeks of isolation, you will experience a psychological withdrawal. You will feel the urge to check in, to social climb, and to seek the comforting warmth of validation. But if you possess the Machiavellian discipline to push through that initial discomfort, a remarkable transformation occurs. Your attention span expands dramatically. Your capacity for prolonged, high-intensity focus skyrockets. You begin to experience the rare, elite state of hyperfocus where weeks of monumental work can be executed in a matter of days. You are no longer reacting to the world, you are actively shaping it through sheer, concentrated willpower. Machiavelli frequently analyzed the rise of extraordinary historical figures who seized control of their destinies against impossible odds. He observed that the defining characteristic of these individuals was their capacity to operate independently of human sentimentality. They understood that the collective mass of humanity is inherently reactive, guided by immediate emotion and short-term survival instincts. If you allow your strategic decisions to be influenced by the consensus of the crowd, you are effectively letting the blind lead the blind. Strategic detachment grants you the ultimate competitive advantage, absolute emotional objectivity. When you look at your professional landscape, your industry, or your competitors without the distorting lens of social emotionalism, you see things exactly as they are. You see the hidden vulnerabilities in your competition, you recognize the market inefficiencies that others miss, and you execute your moves with cold, surgical precision. You no longer waste valuable energy wondering what people think of your methods, because your eyes are locked entirely on the ultimate metric of victory. Solitude is the ultimate filter for truth. It strips away the comforting lies of the collective and leaves you face to face with the raw, unadulterated requirements of legendary success. Transitioning from a state of chronic social attachment to absolute strategic detachment requires more than just intellectual understanding, it demands a ruthless, highly structured execution protocol. You cannot simply wake up tomorrow and declare that you are detached without a definitive blueprint. If you attempt to isolate yourself without a rigorous system, you will quickly succumb to loneliness, boredom, and the powerful psychological gravity of your old habits. To focus 100% on success through a Machiavellian framework, you must implement a structured protocol engineered for the modern landscape. This is the definitive blueprint for entering a phase of radical execution, a calculated period of operational isolation designed to transform your latent potential into tangible dominance. The first phase of this blueprint is the immediate implementation of an attention audit and the creation of strategic friction. You must look at your phone, your calendar, and your daily routine not through the lens of emotional comfort, but through the hard calculus of asset allocation. Identify every individual, every group chat, and every superficial social obligation that actively drains your cognitive energy without providing a measurable return on investment. Once these liabilities are identified, you do not engage in dramatic confrontations or emotional explanations. Machiavelli explicitly advised against unnecessary conflict as it wastes valuable energy and creates predictable enemies. Instead, you utilize the strategy of quiet withdrawal. You introduce massive communication friction. You stop responding to non-essential messages immediately. You let calls go to voicemail. You politely decline social invitations with vague but professional justifications. By increasing the time it takes for people to access your mind, you naturally filter out the casual distractors, the gossipers, and the energy vampires. You reclaim your time without firing a single shot. The second phase of the protocol is the establishment of absolute focus blocks and neurochemical stabilization. You must construct an environment that actively protects your deep work from the chaotic impulses of the outside world. This means establishing a rigid daily schedule where specific, multi-hour windows are completely non-negotiable. During these blocks, your phone is placed in another room, all notifications are permanently disabled, and your entire cognitive capacity is funneled into a singular, high-leverage objective, whether that is scaling an e-commerce infrastructure, mastering quantitative trading models, or engineering a disruptive business asset. You treat these focus blocks with the exact same reverence that an elite athlete treats Olympic training. This deliberate isolation allows your brain to transition out of the fractured, dopamine-depleted state of modern social media and enter the rare state of cognitive flow. In this territory of deep concentration, your speed of execution doubles, your pattern recognition sharpens, and you begin to accomplish in a single month what the average, distracted professional struggles to achieve in an entire year. However, a critical challenge arises when implementing radical detachment. How do you manage essential relationships, such as family, close friends, or indispensable professional allies, without completely destroying your social fabric? This is where modern self-help completely fails, preaching an aggressive, antisocial isolation that ultimately ruins reputations and burns valuable bridges. A true practitioner of Machiavellian pragmatism operates with far greater sophistication. You do not become a hostile hermit, you become a strategic diplomat. Machiavelli understood that appearance is just as important as reality. Therefore, you maintain a polite, warm, and highly professional facade in your necessary interactions. When you speak with colleagues or family, you are entirely present, courteous, and supportive, but psychologically, you keep them at a strict distance. You share your kindness, but you never share your grand strategy. You protect your inner ambitions with absolute secrecy. You allow the world to see a pleasant, compliant individual, while behind closed doors, you are executing a cold, calculated plan for absolute independence. You play the social game just enough to keep the peace, ensuring that no one perceives you as a threat until your position of success is completely unassailable. As you sustain this protocol over weeks and months, a profound and permanent psychological shift occurs. The initial anxiety of missing out completely dissolves, replaced by a deep, unshakable sense of personal sovereignty. You no longer wake up checking your phone to see who validated your existence overnight. You wake up locked into your own metrics, driven entirely by the cold metrics of your own execution. You stop looking at the world as a place where you must beg for acceptance, and begin viewing it as an expansive landscape of raw opportunity waiting to be organized by your willpower. By detaching from the noise of the collective, you have successfully broken the invisible chains of social compliance. You are no longer a reactive pawn drifting aimlessly in the currents of public opinion. You have become an unstoppable, self-sustaining force of nature, focused entirely on the absolute manifestation of your highest potential. This journey of strategic isolation is not an easy path, and it is certainly not meant for everyone. It is a narrow road reserved exclusively for the few who possess the rare discipline to trade temporary social comfort for permanent, legendary success. If you have made it this far into our analysis, it means you recognize the profound truth of these principles, and you know deep down that your current level of attachment is the only thing standing between you and the empire you are capable of building. We at Lucid Soma want to thank you for dedicating your most valuable asset, your undivided attention, to this deep dive into the architecture of power and mind control. The path to becoming truly unstoppable requires continuous refinement and a willingness to look at reality without illusions. If this analysis brought clarity to your current struggle and sharpened your strategic perspective, we invite you to quietly support our work. Subscribe to the channel, leave a thoughtful reflection in the comments below on how you plan to implement strategic detachment in your own life, and share this insight with the single most ambitious person you know. Stay focused, protect your sovereignty, and let your execution speak for itself. We will see you in the next analysis.